Welcome back. Here with us in the studio is Mr. Andrew Khoo, the co-chair of Human Rights Committee of the Bar Council. Welcome. It's Teo Beng Hok's case. Leland told us that the family do not understand why there's no one in MACC is being charged when the court's verdict is that Beng Hok did not die of suicide.
Well, I mean, the sad case of Teo Beng Hok has several parts to it. And of course, firstly, is the fact that the police, when they did investigate the death of Teo Beng Hok, did not identify any particular person that there was sufficient evidence to say that he or they were responsible for having caused the death. And then, of course, you had the Royal Commission of Inquiry, which again then came to the conclusion that Beng Hok committed suicide, and there was an application for judicial review of that decision, and finally the Court of Appeal ruled that they overturned the open verdict, the finding that Beng Hok had committed suicide, and basically concluded that he had met his death at the hands of person or persons unknown. So this reopened the case, as it were, and now both the MACC and the police, I'm given to understand, have reopened the investigation into the circumstances surrounding Beng Hok's death, and we are still waiting to see what is the outcome of those investigations.
Okay, just now before the show, we had a chat regarding the inquiries, and there are lots of challenges and difficulties faced by the family members. Can you tell us?
Well, I mean, I think the whole problem with the Teo Beng Hok death is the fact that the government has not really been very proactive in terms of the investigation. Once the police made the initial investigation, there was, a referral, of course, as things are, to the Attorney General for prosecution. He did not prosecute, and even though the RCI pointed to perhaps some people being possibly having contributed to the circumstances which caused Beng Hok, as they argued, to commit suicide, again, the Attorney General didn't said that there was no prosecution going to happen. So that's why the family had to take things further and to apply for judicial review, and that is where they are at this point in time. But it's been a long drawn process. It's been a very painful process. There have been procedural and hurdles and also objections along the way. It's almost as though the government was trying very hard to not move this any further, and I suppose that's contributed to the pain, the suffering, the prolonging of the pain and suffering of the Teo family.
The Attorney General has the ultimate power to determine whether to charge or not, right? Do you think it's fair enough to just to give one person that power, so much power?
I think two things can be said about that. Here, firstly, in Malaysia, what we have is the fact that the Attorney General, who is the principal legal advisor to the government, is also the Director of Public Prosecutions. So the two come into one. And so when the Attorney General makes a decision not to prosecute in his capacity as the Director of Public Prosecutions, sometimes questions arise as to what hat is he wearing, or what considerations is he taking into account. Is he looking from the advice of government, or is he looking strictly from a prosecutorial perspective? So one of the things that other jurisdictions, even within the British Commonwealth, have done is to separate the role of the Attorney General and that of the Director of Public Prosecutions, to make the DPP a senior civil servant and to make the Attorney General a politician accountable to Parliament. And that's one of the ways in which you bring about that separation. The other way, of course, is to allow for judicial review of the exercise of discretion. There is no reason on earth why the Attorney General's exercise of discretion in whether or not to charge a person or not cannot be the subject of a judicial review. Any decision ought to be reviewable by the courts to make sure that it was arrived at properly.
I believe that there were MPs or people raising this question. Why did the government give us a satisfactory answer?
Well, I mean, the government merely said, as part of our constitution, that is the power and the function given to the Attorney General, and he exercised that discretion, and therefore it cannot be second guessed.
But you have mentioned just now other countries, they separate the two roles.
Yeah, so I mean, this is about democratic maturity of any nation. I think you get to a point where you've got to decide, how you want your particular administration of justice to evolve and to be improved. And they've decided that all these things ought to be reviewable. In Malaysia, we've taken a slightly more conservative view about judicial review. I mean, there's so many times when the government has tried to limit or to restrict the scope of judicial review. So they don't really like courts questioning the decision of the executive. That's just the climate that we have. So we need to change that. But that can only be done in the political realm, as it were.
Speaking of political realm, IPCMC versus EAIC. I still don't get it. Why do they not set up IPCMC just because they are afraid of to upset the police? I don't think that is acceptable.
Well, I mean, some people would point to the fact that the police represent a very large group of civil servants, and they exert tremendous influence on the government, and the government relies on them to help them in the administration of law and order in this country. So there's almost perhaps one could call it a symbiotic relationship between the executive and the police, and certainly I think it's quite fair to say that the government doesn't seem to want to upset the police because they want it on their side in order to be able to smoothly administer at least law and order in this country. But yeah, I mean, when you say you don't get it, I would just say to you, join the club. A lot of us don't get it, and the only explanation is that there is the lack or absence of political will to push this through. But I think my message to the government is this: as long as people doubt the credibility of the police, it actually undermines support for the government. So if the government is really interested in getting the support of the rakyat or winning back the support of the rakyat, one of the things that it really has to do is to address this, as I said, gap or deficit of credibility in the police, because it is dragging the government down with it.
But I think not just the police, MACC, Immigration Department, all these authorities have to be taken accountable in their dealings.
Correct. I mean, the whole issue of the integrity of law enforcement agencies. And I suppose that's why the government said, okay, fine, if this is a concern, we'll set up the EAIC, Enforcement Agencies Integrity Commission, because then it covers 18 law enforcement agencies and the police. But what we are saying is that, a huge amount of the issues that the public has is with the police. So why not set up a specialized mechanism that deals with complaints about the police? The government seems to be beginning to get the message, as it were, but at the moment it's only focusing on corruption. So, for example, when the Minister of Home Affairs in September went with the Prime Minister to New York for the General Assembly, there was a report that he made a side trip to the New York Police Department, and he was looking at their Internal Affairs Department and trying to set up one here, but focus really on corruption. And my question to the Minister of Home Affairs is, why stop just at corruption? Why not empower a truly independent Internal Affairs Department that will look at all aspects of police conduct, including, for example, convening shooting boards to review the discharge of firearms by the police to make sure that it was a so-called clean shoot. All these things will build trust and confidence in the police, and then, as I said, ultimately renewed confidence that the government has got a handle over its law enforcement agencies and that they're not just operating in a climate or environment of impunity.
Listen, rakyat do not want to keep seeing people dying because of all these. No, I don't want to. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think what you're saying is something that we all feel. I mean, at the end of the day, whoever is killed is somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's relative, right? And today it's someone else. Tomorrow it could be you, your family, your relative. Why do we have to wait until that point in time before the rakyat say enough is enough? I think that the time has come. In fact, it's probably way past the time for us to stand up as citizens and to demand accountability and transparency from the police and also all other law enforcement agencies. After all, at the end of the day, we are paying their salaries. It is the taxpayer that pays for the salaries of the police and other law enforcement agencies. It's not government money, it's the people's money. And the people deserve an account of how their money is being spent.
I mean, it's very depressing whenever I read about death in custody or even death shooting. What can the public do?
Well, I think the public really needs to get involved. And they can involve in various levels. I mean, first of all, use your neighborhood associations or community groups to interact with the police and to have a working relationship with the police, to build some sort of confidence, to also remind the police that the rakyat are looking into the conduct of the police, and that's something that the police need to be reminded about. Too often, we see the police as this particular group that we cannot touch or we cannot question, and indeed the comments from the Inspector General of Police of late about how he will take action against anybody who insults the police. I mean, this to a certain extent undermines the ability of the rakyat to question the police, because they get worried that if they suddenly ask questions about the police, they might find themselves being investigated by the police for sedition, and that's the flavor of the current times. So people are afraid. They need to overcome that fear and to get together in community groups and to hold the police to account. The other way, of course, is to join civil society. There are many civil society groups that are looking into various aspects of police accountability. Not sometimes just as police accountability, but accountability of government as a whole. So join that, support that, help fund that, and also perhaps if you're a young person looking for a vocation in life, looking for an interesting job to do, consider working for some of these non-governmental organizations that are working.
Volunteer, yeah.
Well, not so much volunteer. You can get paid to work as full-time staff. I mean, nobody gets rich working in the NGO community in these kinds of areas, but consider that to be your contribution to the betterment of society and the creation of a more just and fair and law-abiding Malaysia for the future.
Don't get me wrong, I do think that there are good police around. Like a year back when my car broke down, there are police who came and helped. They are very friendly, helpful bunch, but they are bad apples which created this phenomenon, this situation. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think, what you have to be concerned about is the damage that's being done to the institution of the police force. I totally agree with you. There are lots of rank and file, honest policemen who are trying to do a hard day's work, and I want to salute them and I want to acknowledge their contribution. But it all the more makes it important for them to speak out against their fellow police officers, men or women, who are tarnishing the reputation of the police, because they are undermining the excellent work that these honest police officers, people with integrity, are actually doing. So you want to self-check to a certain extent. You want to have a strong internal affairs department, internal discipline mechanism to make sure that the bad apples are rooted out of the police force. But for as long as you keep silent and not do anything about it, then sadly you are contributing to the undermining and the lack of confidence that the rakyat have in the police force.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much for coming. We hope that you will be back again and update us on the other cases.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we Rakyats are not powerless. So take action, join the civil society, take responsibility. This is our country and the future is in our hands.